the whole document.getElementById. I don't know that there was ever much of a explanation of the syntax,
Okay.
the purposes behind all that. So sometimes I feel like I've been shown how to fish, but not taught to. I mean, given a fish, but not taught to fish.
All right. So this is a really important concept. So let's take a couple minutes and first let's Google it, and then let's look at an example and debug it and really dive into this thing. So anytime you're not sure how to type document.getElementById, I would just say you could Google document.getElementById or JavaScript getElementById. Any one of those things that you Google, it'll pull up the exact same thing. So I'll just type in JavaScript getElementById. W3 Schools, our favorite place. All right, so notice you have document.getElementById. You can trust this. You can copy it from here, throw it into your program. It's not plagiarizing or anything. It's just proper syntax. That's totally fine. So here's the proper syntax, okay? And it says, this function, getElementById, returns the element that has the ID attribute with the specified value, okay? It returns null if no element exists. Okay, so we've all seen this work. We've done assignments with it, and so you know that and in this case, when we call the function my function, it'll reference this ID with demo up in here, and then it will replace that current value with hello world. Okay, that's what inner HTML does. It injects something from JavaScript into your page wherever you specified the ID. So if I try it, it'll just say hello world. Okay, now let's debug a program doing this. So here I have my template program. Not much going on here. I'm going to copy this file path. There we go, copy path, and paste it in my browser. Okay, F12 to open up my developer tools. I'm in the sources tab, and I could click on the file right here, my template.html file. I'm going to blow this up because I don't really have much going on in the body of my page. Okay, so let's think back to week 3 where we dealt with HTML. Sorry, you guys. Well, because that had to have been a half of week 2. Okay, so the first half of week 2, we were dealing with HTML, right? That was our HTML chapter, and we learned about body. Okay, and everything in the body of an HTML document, you will actually see rendered in the page. Okay, everything else you don't see rendered in the page. Everything else you'll see if you open up the developer tools, but that's it. Okay, but the body is what you'll actually see on the page. Document.getElementById will search the body of the page for a specific ID. Okay, so if you were looking for an ID and you can't find it anywhere in this body, then you'll get an error saying, hey, it returned null, just like we saw in the W3 Schools website just now. It's like, hey, if you couldn't find it or for whatever reason it's not there, it'll just return null. Now, I want to put a breakpoint right here on line 23. Now, if you haven't seen, so here's our video spreadsheet. Let's go to the videos tab. Okay, so right here, pull this up a little bit. The Chrome Developer Tools 3 sources, okay, that is how you debug. I have another debugging video right here. These are extremely handy tools to learn how to use. And you can use them on tests too. I totally allow that, okay? If you guys can learn how to use these tools and use it to get half your answers in tests, I fully support that, okay? Anyways, so I put a breakpoint in, and what this breakpoint will do is it will allow me to stop, or pause rather, the execution of the program, okay? So I put it on the first line inside of this function, template function. So as soon as I hit this button, which we'll call template function, my code is going to stop on line 23, okay? So I'm going to do that. I'm going to hit this button. It stopped on line 23. Now here, I can do a bunch of stuff, okay? I can see what different variables are in their current state. I can highlight over stuff to see what will be computed if I'm like doing a bunch of math and I want to see, okay, what will this chunk get? What will that chunk get? I can hover over document itself, okay, this built-in JavaScript object, and I can see the document has a lot of stuff in it, okay? All of this is accessible to us. Now, I have very rarely done stuff with many of these things. I've probably only ever touched like 20% of these, if that, okay? But there are a number of these that are extremely helpful. And depending on what type of website you're building or what type of program you're building, you might use some of these other unique ones that I haven't touched, okay? But there's a bunch of different attributes. And among these, there's one called value. You can see this value that we use right here. There's, well, sorry, value is not in there, but there's a function called getElementById, which is inside of document. And then there's a bunch of other stuff in here that is accessible to us as well. Okay, so if I hover over getElementById, you can see there's this like squiggly F right here. That just means that it's a function that we can use. Okay, so that's why you have to use document.getElementById, because getElementById is part of the document object. Okay, kind of like math, the math object in JavaScript. If I was going to come over to the console here and type in math.pi, you see we get a nice little pi number there. If I just type in pi, it'd be like, pi is not defined. I have no idea what that is. Okay, it's because pi is part of the math object. Okay, same with square root, same with random. All those things are part of the math object. Similarly, document is a very large object built into JavaScript that helps us access different things in our HTML document. Okay, so getElementById, this function, will isolate an entire element in the body of our document if it finds that ID. So I just highlighted from document to the end of this parenthesis, and you can see it found, we have an input. Anytime you see the pound sign right here, that is for ID. Okay, so you can see I have an input with an ID of temp1. Okay, it found this input down here that I have. Okay, it searched my body, searched the body of my document, and it found this ID. Okay, and then in here, inside of this ID, there's a bunch of stuff again. Again, most of which you will never use, but depending on what kind of program you're building, you're going to use some of it. Okay, for our cases in this class, there's this value right here, which we will use a lot. This value currently is an empty string because I didn't type anything into the input box. Okay, but that is how you would retrieve input from a user, by using this document.getElementById, and then in this ID that it finds, grab the value. Okay, the other big one that we're going to use a lot, if I scroll up here, is inner HTML. Okay, inner HTML is how you will put something back into the page. I have a question here in the chat. Let's see. Beware that it's also case sensitive. Yes. So our conversation about how HTML isn't case sensitive and JavaScript is, this lands in the JavaScript realm. It is extremely case sensitive. Okay. If I named this, for example, let me come out of this. If I named this temp1 with a capital T, and I refresh this page, you can see it updated there, and I hit my button. If I highlight from document to the end of this temp1 parenthesis, you can see it's null. All that stuff that was there a second ago, it's null. It's not there. Okay, so just like W3 School said, if it doesn't find the ID, it'll come back null. Okay, and that's an error that a lot of people get. All right, anytime you see, let me just show you the error. It will say, cannot read property value of null. Okay, the property that we're trying to reference here is value, and it's saying, hey, this is value of null, which means whatever is to the left of that dot came up null. All right, whether you misspelled document or had to type one getElementById or couldn't find the ID, it'd be null. So I was talking with a student yesterday, and I suggested that when they have a template function or when they have a template program, and notice as my template program, I have a function that will actually read input from the user and output something back by placing a message into the inner HTML of the document. Okay, if you did something like this, you could split it out into comments and say, hey, this is my input. This will be where I put my processing. And then this is where my output will be. Okay, anytime you have dot value, that is to retrieve an input from the user, usually from, or just about always from, a text box or sorry, a text area or an input. Okay, and then you have your processing, whatever you need to do. If you need to do math, concatenate strings, that's your processing. And then your output is when you put something into the inner HTML of your document.